Welcome, everyone, to the Global XR community. And I'm very excited that we have a wonderful panel today. And our topic is overcoming challenges in custom world development for Mesh for Teams. Hi, Alexander.
Yes, yes. So welcome everyone. Cool. We're going to talk about Mesh for Teams. I think most of the viewers will know what Mesh for Teams is, but just to explain it a bit very simplistic, is Mesh for Teams is like the new Altspace VR, but mostly being used within Teams. It allows you to collaborate, to join meetings in virtual space. You can run it on desktop, you can run it in virtual reality, and the fun thing with Mesh for Teams is that you can also create your own custom worlds. And that's the session today, the panel today about. So we have a large panel, five, six people, if I'm right. Um, and they already have a lot of experience with building custom worlds. But let's pull them in and let them introduce themselves. So let's start with everyone adding. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So, hello. So let's start with a introductory round. Let's start, Marco. Let's start with you. Just tell a bit about yourself, specifically around the mesh routines.
Thanks, Alexander, and also a warm welcome from my side. I'm very excited to be on this panel round and talking about mesh custom worlds. I'm in the lucky position that I already have access to mesh custom worlds since a couple of months, nearly more than 1 year. I was included in the beta and really saw the evolution, what Microsoft has done with the customization and the possibilities for developers. So I'm looking around or looking forward for this round here.
Superb. Sha, introduce yourself.
Hi, good day everyone. I'm Sharmi Areta. I'm currently working on a Mesh POC, acting as a development team lead. My core skills are Unity XR, Microsoft Mesh, mixed reality, and 3D modeling. I started working on Metaverse since May 2022. My first project was Mangrove Restoration Site, focuses on growth and death simulation of a mangrove trees and also gives the best time to plant with moon phase and tides API. And that's all. Thank you.
Nice. Angeline.
Hi everyone. So I am Angeline Acotiliar. I am one of the developers who's currently working on Mesh World development. So my core skills centered more on Unity development, 3D modeling, Microsoft Mesh. And I also started working on Metaverse last July 2022. We created digital twin for Outspace VR. And then later on, we also started on Mesh World development last June 2023 up until now. So yeah, I hope you can learn a lot in this event.
Thank you so much. And then Maria.
Hi everyone. Happy to be here with all of you now. So I'm Maria Arlene Alcantara, and I am a UX designer in Microsoft Mesh, and I'm part of the ATCP Metaverse team. So I started on Metaverse and Mesh projects since 2022. So basically, my primary role as a UX or user experience designer is to create concept designs by first understanding the needs of the preferred users. Second, create intuitive user interfaces. And lastly, I'm also responsible for creating immersive and engaging experiences within Microsoft Mesh. So we are excited to have us today, and that's it, Alex.
Okay, thank you. Excited to have you also here. It's a large group and with a lot of knowledge. But not forget the last two people. Owi, uh, please do.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Uwe Peñaranda. So, I'm currently leading the ATCP Metaverse and Mesh team. So, as for my experience, I started with Metaverse and Mesh actually just last year. From my past projects, most of them were SharePoint development, and web API development. So right now we are in terms of experience, we already started on doing the cloud scripting for Mesh, which we're gonna be um, talking about later. So happy to be here.
Perfect. Thank you. And Leo?
Hello everyone. I'm Leo Miguel. I'm one of the developer for ATCP Metaverse. So my core skill focuses on Unity development, 3D modeling, and mixed reality. And I've been a part of the Metaverse project starting June 2022 up until now. So we created digital twin for Outspace VR, and later on I work on mixed reality projects. So I think that would be all about me. I hope this session will bring you learnings and fun, of course, to all of us. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Saskia, do you want to start?
Yeah, of course. By the way, I can hear you typing with your keyboard.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was actually typing into the chat because that's a very
So,
good point. People can ask questions on YouTube, so if they do, I need to respond. But I actually have a very loud keyboard. Sorry about that. I will not try to touch it.
anyway, well, I'm super excited to have this large group of experts here with us. So let's start with a simple question. Like maybe tell us a bit about the worlds you've built so far. Marco, you said you've been doing this for months. What kind of worlds have you built in Mesh?
A very good question. So my experience or my former experience was Allspace VR, and I did a lot of crazy stuff in Allspace VR. Lots of experimenting, how you can extend interactions, and also stuff in your 3D environment at the end. And it was a seamless transition to Mesh at the end. You nearly have the same tools or the same environments to build those in 3D immersion environments. And I created lots of experimental stuff where we showcase some of the functionalities, which is included in the Mesh toolkit, which is included in the scripting toolkit, and just to see how far we can go with our stuff. That's mainly what I'm doing. I'm not in 3D modeler or artist, so I always rely on assets which I can get my hands on and working together with very skilled people. But in general, that's mostly what I'm doing is some experimental stuff and see how far we can go and also make some suggestions for further projects, what it's capable of and what is time consuming at the end.
Cool, interesting. And so you're basically mostly building experimental stuff. Maybe someone else on the panel, has any one of you built something for a customer maybe in Mesh who wants to talk about it?
Yep. Maybe for ATCP, Shara can start with the wind turbines that we have created last year, about the first version of Mesh, and then Angeline can talk about the airport that we are building right now, along with the NPC models.
So just to share my experience as part of Accenture in the Philippines Metaverse, our first POC was wind turbine, which was the early version of Mesh, more of physics, interactions, and also plays video. By the way, it's a custom world, wind turbines with conference room also, and some of the functions also are plays video using the web slate, what we call web slate, from today's version of Mesh. That's all. Thank you.
Awesome. Can you explain what are maps, web slates? What does that
Uh,
mean?
Yeah, WebSlate actually it you will provide a URL that will be projected on the WebSlate feature in Mesh, and that would be the landing page of that WebSlate. And
Okay.
also, I think Leo has some additional info about WebSlate.
Thank you, Shara. So, in addition to what Shara shared, mesh web slates are panels that display web content. It also loads an interactive page through a provided URL. As of now, we don't have any use case yet, but we already know how to use it. And we just referred from the Microsoft Learn documentation.
Cool.
Maybe something to add from my experimental tryouts. Websites are very, very cool and quite easy to integrate external content. We just heard you can showcase or show every website which is available, and this could be everything. This could be an HTML website, of course, but it could be also images on PDF, which you can share with the whole audience. So we did some stuff where we put a website on the stage where we have a moderator and he has some buttons to navigate different kinds of URL to have something like a presentation where you can upload in PDF and the separate pages are displayed on the website in the background and everybody can see that at the same time. You need to be a little bit careful with websites as they running independently on the client for every user. So when you integrate something like a video or interact on the website, it's really independent per user. So you need to have some tricky stuff to make in the background to share stuff with all of the users, but a very good and easy integration from external content into your custom world.
Oh, nice. Bit like in Outspace VR, right? You also had this browser functionality.
Exactly. The main difference is that you can control the browser URLs now with scripting or with cloud scripting to have a common view of that. The browser was always in Outspace love and hate relation.
Yes. Is that different now? I mean, I have used that a lot in Old Space VR, and it was always every time it was waiting till it works or not, and otherwise, is that better now with Mesh for Teams?
They improving it a lot. What I've heard, the current state of the browser engine is 2 years behind, and they try to solve that together also with Meta, especially for the Quest 2 or Quest 3 version of Mesh. In the PC or in the desktop environment, everything is quite all right, and you can call or display nearly every web functionalities, which is common. On the Quest and Meta devices, it's a little bit different. You have to test if the URL really works for you. It's getting better, but it's still, in browser engine integrated from Microsoft, which is not on the actual standard, of course.
So it's depending on the web browser version running on the device. That is interesting. I didn't know that actually. Thank you.
So,
shall I?
Yeah,
go on. Go on.
Awesome. Okay, one more question, then you can go. And so, but basically, custom worlds is our topic, right? And some of you already mentioned your Unity developers. So I'm wondering, I have not built a world in Mesh yet. What are the like? How is the whole process? Like, you assume you build something in Unity and then you somehow get it into Mesh. Can one of you maybe walk us through that process a little bit?
Yeah, maybe I could start with that, Shashkia. So, based from my experience as the UX designer of the Metaverse team, you have to define the concept and design of your immersive experience. So, you have to consider who will be the target audience and the purpose of the experience, plus the desired level of interactivity. So, you have to sketch the layout, the user interface, or the interfaces, interactive elements rather. Maybe you're wondering how the developers who could do that. For me as a UX designer, I usually create a storyboard. So it's a visual planning technique that I usually use, wherein it involves creating a series of concept screens, arranged sequence to represent key scenes or actions or interactions, and it is a visually showing the flow for a narrative or user experience. So it allows us, not just the designer but also the developers, to map out of the progressions of events, identify potential issues, and communicate ideas effectively product before producing and development process begins. So with that said, we develop an immersive space in Microsoft Mesh for VR therapy or virtual reality therapy, and it is a form of treatment that usually immersive virtual environments to simulate situations or scenarios to support individuals with mental health issues. So we build an airport scene for aerophobia or fear of flying patients. But later on, Angeline will share more about this mesh world.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, I have heard already a few times the term Mesh Toolkit. So, what does Mesh Toolkit means? Uh, Owi, can you tell me a
Yeah.
bit about that?
Yep. So for the mesh toolkit, actually, it's a package that you have to install on your Unity for you to be able to use mesh and deploy mesh solution in the mesh world. So it's more of enabling you to have more controls, so you can use that in the mesh environment.
So, does that mean that you can do everything within Unity, or is it a little bit different?
It's a little bit different because, example, for once you enable the mesh in your solutions, there would be two approach that you can use on your custom world. Not just doing the design or doing the designing the models inside the world. You can also use the visual scripting. That's a feature in mesh, and also using the cloud scripting in mesh.
What is the difference between visual and cloud scripting?
For the visual scripting, maybe Shara can provide more details on this. Shara, about
Okay.
the experience that we have in visual scripting.
Yeah. For Mesh visual scripting, it is based on Unity visual scripting also, but has added features or for Mesh development, like show dialogue, physics events nodes, and what we have used right now is the simple Mesh trigger event, like collider event that pop-ups show dialogue when an avatar collided with the collider. That's one of the visual scripting that we are using right now. But for now, some of the nodes are not yet available for mesh development. But there are few or there are some nodes that are specific to mesh environment.
Okay, that's so when we talk about nodes, it means, if I'm right, it is like child game objects where you have components on, and then you have a corresponding piece of script which runs within visual scripting, if I'm right.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
That's a
Correct.
bit of the way.
Mm.
Yeah, and what does cloud scripting means? Is that then separate or?
Yep. So cloud scripting, you can actually, in a nutshell, you can actually describe visual scripting as like a low code approach for when doing your events in mesh. So it's a different story when you do the cloud scripting. So cloud scripting doesn't have any dependencies in mesh. Well, you just need to enable the cloud scripting feature. It would be running on a separate thread, meaning there is no dependency if, for example, the airport, the airport use case that we're doing right now. So what we're playing around is we are calling a web API via cloud scripting, and the web API, this API is being, we're using an Azure trigger for that to fetch data from Dataverse. So all of our data are coming from the Dataverse, and it's being rendered through game objects. But if you would be running that, but on a native way, if you're running that in Unity, you need to have a Unity web request, right? But here, since I'm using cloud scripting, I don't have any dependencies anymore under Unity, so it's like running a separate .NET API
Ah,
on the side. Yeah.
that's interesting because it also
Yep.
means that it can run parallel, so you don't have to wait. You just wait till it triggered yourself, and then you can
That's correct.
continue.
Mm.
And that
So
is called from visual scripting, I presume, because that is what is incorporated within the Unity application you built for Mesh.
yep, that's correct.
Okay. That's interesting. My last question, and then I'm going to give it back to Saskia. Uh, so the toolkit, and I think I'm going to ask this question to Marco. I know it exists of a lot of different things, like the mesh physics, mesh interactables, and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that and explain a bit about what to expect when you're going to use Mesh Toolkit?
Okay, so I think the Mesh Toolkit is the coolest thing which happened for us from a developer perspective. We just talked about visual scripting and cloud scripting, which is included in the toolkit. Maybe for the old space developer to give some advice for the cloud and visual scripting, what's the difference? Cloud scripting is a little bit like the old mixed reality extension, which we are used to extend old space with some interactions, whatever, but it's running on the cloud. So you always have latency to trigger something, to change something in your Unity scene or in the mesh application. The visual scripting is really running on the client side. So it's really good for interaction stuff like pushing a button or catching something because it's not going to the cloud and have latency stuff. There's also some, you mentioned it already, some additional stuff in the toolkit, like the web slates are included there, and also a physics engine, so that which is very cool. You can have physics object, which is or depending on the environment, maybe with some bounce effect, or you throw something like a dart or a ball. And this is all included. It's running on the client side and shared some of the values through all of the users. A very optimized physics engine. Microsoft tells that at the end. But let's see, when you have lots of users with physics, it's always one of the latency problems or the speed stuff at the end. Another thing is also in the toolkits, there's some graphical stuff included, which help to build some interface stuff in Mesh directly. So you have all the panels and buttons, which is based on the mixed reality toolkit. No, it's MRTK with mixed reality. You know what
Yeah,
I
it's
mean? I
MRTK
think
nowadays.
so you have the same design language, which is quite cool. There's also shaders included, which you can use for optimized quest experience. So a lot of stuff in the toolkit at the end, and it's free accessible on GitHub. You can always have the newest versions there, see the release notes, and also some sample projects, which are very, very good for starting with Mesh custom worlds at the end.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So you just mentioned like quest development and shaders and stuff. So two questions. Is there a difference if you develop for virtual reality versus for desktop? And the other one is like, what do you have to consider around shaders and optimization when building for those two platforms? Anyone want to? Okay.
I can start with that from my perspective. As mentioned, I'm not the 3D modeler, so I'm not always in this pain situation where I need to optimize 3D models. So we're still talking about a standalone device. And also when we're talking about Mesh for Teams, in most cases, clients don't have this high-end PCs or laptops to run the high fidelity which you maybe want to do. Nevertheless, in my experience, Mesh is have a very good speed and also possibilities to have a high fidelity from your 3D environment. There are possibilities that you can push one environment just for the PC and another one just for the virtual reality headset. So you can make some optimization in polygon count or shader stuff and so on. So you can have that, but at the end, it's quite tolerant. Microsoft don't make any complaints when you upload the biggest world, which could be several gigabytes. But of course, you always need to optimize that. And you run into problems when you have lots of users in that environment. But it's relative nice what they support at the end. So you guys have
Nice.
anything to add to that?
Yep. To add to that, you have used the WebGL on Unity before, and you're gonna be comparing that to the Mesh app, that's that's really that's way more faster than the
Mhm.
WebGL version of the Unity. So
Hmm.
definitely, um, there are a lot of performance improvements.
Nice. Yeah, it also sounds like there are way more possibilities of if you compare to what was possible in AltSpace VR, that Mesh can already do way more. So I'm wondering then what are the limitations of Mesh compared to like if you just do a Unity application? Michael?
Yep. For that, let me start first with maybe on my end I can share some part of the cloud scripting. So as of right now, we're doing also some research and development on that. One of the limitations that we have is once you have the results coming from your cloud scripting, it's it's quite challenging to pass it over to the visual scripting. So the first plan before was um, we'll be building visual scripting templates in Mesh, and we're planning to construct data so it can interact with the cloud scripting right now. So that's one of the challenges we're experiencing. As of now, it's hard to pass variables from one script to another, from cloud to visual scripting. So that's one of the challenges that we noticed. I think chat has some limitations as well for the visual scripting part.
Yeah, let me share some. One of the limitation I have encountered was the nodes availability in Mesh visual scripting. For now, there's a specific nodes that are supported in Mesh. Only a subset of Unity functionality is exposed to visual scripting, and also variables and properties with non-simple types, including object references, aren't automatically shared in Mesh visual scripting for now.
And also to add, if we're going to be planning to trigger HTTP request via visual scripting, I don't know, Marco, if you have some insights on that, but we find it very challenging as well if we're going to be sending out API requests coming from visual scripting. It's a lot of nodes there, so
Yeah,
it's quite
like
challenging.
custom event trigger. Yeah, you will see an error in Mesh visual scripting diagnostic saying that it is not allowed. So yeah.
Correct.
Thank you. Oh, Marco, did you want to say?
I just also want to add, yeah, this is something Microsoft is still figuring out which part, if you need to take the visual scripting or the cloud scripting for which kind of use cases, and especially stuff like talking to external APIs, getting some data. Cloud scripting is quite good for that, but again, then the missing part to get that into the visual scripting to make something client-based and much faster than the cloud scripting stuff. So in cloud scripting, you can change, for example, the position of 3D object, but you can do that maybe with one object, but with several objects over a certain time, it's getting very, very laggy. And for that, you need some visual scripting and combine that at the end. And this is something Microsoft working quite a lot on that. They mentioned that on our last meeting also. I think from my perspective, the biggest missing part is currently to dynamically load 3D objects into your mesh environment. So every 3D object you want to take or want to visualize, it needs already in Unity. So that makes dynamic loading, for example, building a digital twin on 3D models where you have another portal or another website to host those, it's not possible currently, this situation. And I think also in the future, Microsoft is talking a lot about AI integration. We also saw that in Teams where you can generate with Copilot in custom space for you, for small people or for a small round of people. But I think there's stuff missing like in virtual keyboards so that we can have input from users to get text. And also what I would love to see is some voice stuff so that I can record voice from the users and use that for stuff like virtual assistant to give some hints. That is very difficult currently to build such situation and use cases. So I'm looking forward that Microsoft is doing stuff there. And the biggest limitation at the end, I think we can end with that from my perspective, is the accessibility. So custom worlds require Teams premium license. And if we know AltSpace, it was so easy to create events, makes it public. Mesh still needs a little bit for that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but great that Microsoft is still like actively, developing it and then also taking feedback from groups such as yours into account. So I'm, yeah, wonder where it's going to be like in a year from now. And Alexander, more
Um,
questions?
yes. Let me think. What I we talked about limitations. I'm just curious to do it the other way around. So, what do you think is good at building custom worlds? Let's start with Angeline. Would you be able to say something about it? What do you think is good at building these custom worlds? You're still on mute. Let me first ask the question to Leo then. To make it, I will get back to you, Angeline. Leo, what do you think is good at building custom worlds? What does it give you capabilities?
Thank you. I think one of the strength of building custom worlds with Mesh is the ability to create immersive and interactive shared virtual spaces. Uh, as of now, we haven't tried this yet, but moving forward, I think this will be included on the features.
Okay, can you tell a little bit about that actually?
Um, as of now, we're still on research and development about the immersive and interactive shared virtual spaces.
Okay.
So
Now,
just to add to that, for the more of a group interaction. So in Mesh actually you could have multiple participants inside. So this actually fits the one of our use cases. We're planning to have um like an orientation for a group of people for yep. So they can multiple users can actually join the session and then utilize the custom world that we have created.
okay. And let's go back to Angeline.
Mhm.
Hi, Alex.
So the
Can
question
you repeat
is,
the question, please?
what do you like? What do you think is good about building custom worlds? What give it you? What will give it you as capabilities? What does it allow you to do?
Same with the Sir O we mentioned. So we are able to create immersive space that we can collaborate with the team. Also, uh, we can also demo using the immersive spaces using the web slate. So yeah,
That's actually an
that's all.
interesting one. That's an interesting one because it really allows you quickly to demo something to a group of people in a virtual space. So, well, as Marco said, you can't do dynamic 3D object loading. Too bad, because that's a really interesting use case. It still gives you, what I understand, really easily the capability to build something and to show that to others within your organization by just inviting them into that space. Um, Another question, and anyone can say about that. So building worlds means I need to use Unity, I need to use the Mesh toolkit, and so I can do visual scripting, doing cloud scripting. It sounds a lot to me. So is it easy to roll out a world into Teams? How does that work? Owie, I see you're
Yep.
going
For
off
that
mute.
one, yep. Yeah, for that one first, well, Margo, you can add also on this one, but for this is first is the license before starting off anything.
That's a good
So
point.
you need to have a MS Teams premium license, and then after that, you need to create a mesh world wherein it's more of container for your mesh world so you can deploy it. So without that, of course, you cannot use any environment or custom world on the mesh applications. So yep, once you're done with that, you can access that via mesh app. So that it's more of all of the dependency would be actually coming from the license itself. So
So does it mean that without a license, I can still create a world and try it out?
no, without a license, actually, you cannot deploy solutions
But you could
in
do
measure.
something locally, or that's not possible.
You can do something locally yet using just
Okay.
a game mode, yeah, game play around, but you
So
cannot
so
publish.
actually, yeah. So you can't publish, but it gives
No,
people the ability to try Mesh for Teams custom world building out. What I think, Marco, you want to add something?
Yeah, maybe just to add, because it's always also confusing to talk to clients about what is Mesh and what is Mesh for Teams at the end.
Yeah.
And at the end, we're talking about custom worlds, which not included in Mesh or in Teams. So one of the biggest issue I think currently is that we have Mesh for Teams, which where you can jump from every meeting you have in a 3D environment, but those environments are built from Microsoft. You can't create your own custom environments, and those are limited for 16 people at the end. And then you have the bigger brother, so to say, which is a custom world. And custom worlds are currently also like Allspace, where functionality like front rows that you can copy your room when there are more than 16 or 20 people in that instant. But for that, you need, as mentioned, the big license from Teams, and every person who access that custom world needs that license. And that in most cases, not much clients have that license. So the Teams part is still working for them. It's out of the box and included in most license from Microsoft, but custom worlds are really unique. And hopefully that will change because we want to have events with all our employees and stuff like that. And when we limit that with a license model, it's always a little bit tricky.
Yeah, so one of the listeners is Robert Copeland, and he actually mentioned that there is a 6-month free trial license from January, from end of January available. So you can actually try it out, uh, and it eliminates the need for a Teams Premium license for that period. But after that, you will need to get the Teams Premium license. Um, and Jacques Stroud, if I'm saying it right, is so he says, how do you start Mesh locally without Teams? That's actually a good question because from my own experience, and I'm more asking at you guys, is that you have Mesh for Teams, which is just having predefined worlds, which you just said, Marco, to collaborate together with each other. But custom worlds is actually something different. It's not actually part of. I have to be careful here. It's not. It is part of Teams, but it is still separate from the standard worlds you get. So it means. So his question: how do you start Mesh locally? Is that possible without Teams? I think it is, if I'm right.
It is.
And
So
how do you do that?
you can download the application. It's a desktop application for Windows. Currently not for Macs. I'm working still for a Mac version, which we have in the old Allspace times already. But nevertheless, it's a special desktop application in the Windows Store, which you install, and then you need to assign with your credentials and so on. But it's totally separated from Teams. We mentioned that already. It was last year, it was combined somehow, but this was running about with WebGL, and the performance was not so good. So they do it in Teams. There's a WebGL version which they can control with custom environments which they producing, and then you have the desktop application which is running with Unity or with a special engine which is much more performant. And then you have the virtual reality version, so you can also search in the meta store for Mesh. And this version runs both. This is very complicated, but this runs the Mesh for Teams, so you can hop on into Teams meetings, but it also runs the events, the custom worlds, which is on desktop separated.
And the Mesh app can be freely downloaded in the store of Windows and in the store of Meta.
Exactly. So
Okay,
have a
so
look at
that's
the documentation, always a link to the newest version.
okay,
GitHub.
perfect. Yeah, that was a question I also got from the. Let me go a little bit to the questions because we got some questions, and I think we already touched some of these things. So
Yeah,
we
somebody
talked
asked
about it.
about headset
Yes.
support.
Yeah.
So
Can you take
you
that
already
one?
mentioned Meta. So which headsets does it currently support? I'm assuming Quest 2 and 3. And anything else? Someone's asking about the Apple Vision Pro.
Not yet, but let's hope. I think there are lots of Microsoft mixed reality or virtual reality application which makes sense on the Vision Pro, but currently they're focusing on the Meta platform, which they also have a cooperation. So the whole Microsoft application stack will come to the Quest or to the Meta devices, and Mesh is really focused on that. You have also some functionalities like hand tracking and camera pass-through, which is maybe not accessible now, but it was in the beta, and it was really focused on the Meta devices.
Yeah, what about the HoloLens? Is there any plans for that?
Unfortunately, not anymore. There
Hmm.
was a version, but it's not
Yeah,
forward.
the very first one, right?
Indeed. And for now, the last one. And I get a nice reaction of one of the
Yes,
best
Joost.
HoloLens developers in the chat. Hi, Joost.
Joost.
No, I can actually add something on that one. I know that Microsoft, they did not mention this, that they did mention something like this, but in principle, if there is a market, they will do it. And I think that's the same for Vision Pro. If there will be a market on Vision Pro to use Mesh for Teams, it definitely comes there. I think that's the way of how Microsoft always has worked when extending their products and services. But yeah, let's see where it goes. You want to continue, Saskia, with some questions?
I'm looking to the questions to see if there's anything we didn't ask yet.
We can talk a little bit about performance, maybe, because do we have, so for example, do we have tools available to, because what, sorry about this one, I will, if it's okay, I will take this one then. One of the questions we had in the chat that was like, how is this for users experiencing with low bandwidth? And I think this has more to do with when you build a world, it needs to be running well on desktop, but also on the Quest and the Quest 2 and the 3. So are there tools within the toolkit allowing you to check if what you built is running well? What do you need to take into account? Let's start with the tools, for example. Any of you? Maya?
Out of yeah, more.
Oh, sorry, go on. No worries.
Okay, sorry. So, out of the box for Mesh Toolkit, usually we're using the content performance analyzers, but we have also some side checklist, which is Shad is actually looking for like the mesh compression steps that we're doing. Shad.
Yeah, some optimizations on the mesh. For example, FBX file, OBJ file. We have native Unity mesh compression for that. That will also help to optimize our mesh environment, and to add also on the content performance analyzer. It is to maximize the performance of your mesh experience, and also it can give you statically analyze your content authoring time. You can use the CPA to audit triangle counts, batches, polygons, textures, and more. This allows you to catch content optimization issues and opportunities in Mesh.
Nice. And a related question, maybe, how do you actually test in Unity? Is there like a mesh emulator, or do you just run in the Unity editor, or how does that work?
Using mesh emulation mode testing in Unity. In this mode, when you press the Unity editor play button, then it will run. You can get an approximate preview of what the content will be on the mesh app.
Usually for just to add on that, While on the game mode, for visual scripting, we're doing the log debugs steps, and then for cloud scripting, it's more of the runtime log console, just to check what's really happening on the calls we are doing on the cloud scripting and the steps that we're doing in the visual scripting.
And it's quite cool, the mesh emulator, what you can do. It was in former times quite hard to test multi-user scenarios. We remember that also in AllSpace, it always run very good locally. That's the same also with mesh application. When we have some cloud scripting, which is also emulated and running locally, everything is blazing fast. So at the end, you always have, oh, it's too slow, click something and so on. But nevertheless, in this emulator, you can also emulate different persons. So I can say I want to have three splitted screens, and then I can navigate with every window as a user and also test some multi-user experience, which was quite hard in former times. And that's all supported and very, very easy integrated. So we talked about that. You can really easy start with Mesh custom worlds, download the toolkit, open Unity, click F5, and you can get the first experience in Mesh and do everything, which is quite cool, I think.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I have actually completely unrelated question. We wanna earlier one of you mentioned that you were building this application for mental health on Mesh, where people could interact. And I was wondering a bit about I don't know if you can talk about that more, but it sounded really interesting to me. Because I assume you have some kind of therapist and you have some kind of client, and they maybe talk to each other, and so my question was like, how many users would be in that scenario? Because my impression is usually like Mesh is for like larger groups of people to interact, but that seems more like a one-on-one situation. But maybe I'm wrong. And then if it's a one-on-one situation, why would you use Mesh to build it instead of like a regular Unity application? So that's kind of my thought process on that. But maybe one of you can talk about that application a little bit.
All right. So, for the use case of the mental health, so the company that we look into on this case is um it's more of a B2B company that's working alongside it's more of an internal healthcare healthcare team, so they can actually just use the MS Teams and use custom world for the healthcare assistance on their company. So for this one, there are two cases. So the first case that we have targeted is the aerophobia, which is a lot of um, use. The patient um, would be going into the airport, and in an airport, a custom world like an airport, and then what we're planning here is we want to have like a heart rate monitor strap that can actually monitor their anxiety level just by checking their heart rate. So that's one of the things that we're doing researching right now. And then from there, we would know the if what are the level of anxiety when um, he or she can see the whole airport, a lot of people around him or her. So and then also, what about hearing a lot of airport plane or airplane noises? So that's one of the use cases. That's for the single patient scenario. For the group scenario, what we're also thinking is like a group uh, counseling. There is a lot of rehabilitation use cases what we have checked so far. But what if there would be 3 to 4 patients that can actually share their experiences, and then also a healthcare expert would be listening inside Mesh. So that's it.
Nice. It sounds like a really cool application.
Mhm.
And the reason you're using Mesh for this is because it's easier to build the group setting. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
So in Mesh, you can actually create an event which is under your organization. So if there
Hmm.
would be some events that that we can easily actually add those participants. in the mesh events using Teams directly.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Alexander.
Mhm.
Okay, so really interesting till now. We're almost to our time. Um, so I want to end with the following question. I want to ask each of you those. So we have a question. So we heard a lot about mesh. There are some limitations, some things. So if I ask the question, what could Microsoft improve regarding custom world building? So let's start with Marco, for example. So just name one thing you would love that they change or add, or a feature which makes your life a lot easier building stuff.
A free version. So we talk
A
about the
free version.
accessibility. So Teams Premium, in my imagination and also what I've heard from clients, nobody has that at the end. It's very, very
It
limited.
is challenging, yes. It is
And
challenging.
that's something we need to change. We want to broad set mesh
Yeah.
stuff, and it's very, very cool technology. So make it accessible for every employee who have E3 or whatever license. Yeah, would love that.
Thank you. Sha, asking you the same question.
One thing I would like to change or I guess expand in mesh customer building would be, I guess I will be on the technical side. I would
No
like to
problem.
for the available nodes in mesh visual scripting. It that because that would be helpful because it is low code and it's more of drag and drop. I guess if mesh environment would be added another or expand the available nodes in mesh visual scripting, I think it would be helpful to the ones that's a low code person, I guess, and that would be
Okay.
easy for them.
So like a bit like custom nodes, so you can
Yeah,
build your
custom
own
node.
nodes.
Yeah,
That
I
would be
guess.
interesting, definitely.
Thank you.
Angeline.
Hello. For me, I think I am looking forward on unblocking the limitations that we are encountering in nodes. Also, like that we use in scripting. In that way, we can maximize adding the interaction that we can build in custom world.
Okay, thank you.
Also, the limitation in cloud script in combination of cloud scripting and visual scripting. Yeah, so that.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. And Maya?
Hi, so like what Marco said earlier, so for me, Microsoft needs to change their licensing issues with Mesh. That leads the team unable to test and proceed with development. Especially, I'm the UX designer, so I'm really interested to apply the design for a better user experience for the users.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the licenses, in some cases you could say it is achievable since it will deliver this, but it also keeps a lot of people away to try it out and just play with it. And I think Microsoft would benefit from it if that would happen. So
Definitely.
let's try to see if they can do something about that. I'm going to ask Leo now, and then close with Owie. So Leo, what would be for you need to change? What needs Microsoft to change for custom world building?
I think based on the um, experience that we're um, trying right now is to improve the offsetting of the object and avatar interaction, also the interactables and positioning.
And
Okay,
then,
that's
especially, I presume, getting the data from the logged in user and do something with that so you can actually
yep.
interact. Yeah. Yeah, I like that because that's what Marco said about having the audio. I'm not sure if that is always allowed because you're actually recording someone's audio, but able to interact on based on the person you are in the space, that is interesting. Yeah. I know that was a very difficult thing from the beginning when I was playing around with it. And Owie, last but not least.
Maybe for me, if we can, not sure if they have plans on this, that the mesh toolbar, if we can customize that and add some
Ah,
controls there. Because right now, if you're gonna be checking the toolbar, it's actually not in the debug scope. runtime. So I'm not sure if we can customize that in the future. Second is hope they can provide more information in the release notes. We've been meeting a lot of people in Mesh community lately because we have a lot of questions regarding Mesh. So there.
Okay, I like the first thing you mentioned because that would be interesting. Then you can
Mm,
add situation specific buttons or things which allow you to have a bit more control about the environment you're in. Yeah, I like that. Cool. I want to thank you all for being part of this panel. I know you guys have a lot of experience. And every time I even learned a lot of today because some of the things you actually explained I didn't know or was not aware of. So thank you so much. I think people who are seeing this session will have the same feeling. Saskia, do you want to say something?
Yes, no, I completely agree. Thank you so much for all your insights and for this really, really interesting panel. And I think we could go on for 2 more hours with more questions. But so thank you again. Thank you very much for being here.
all right. Thanks,
Bye
everyone.
all.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Thank
So
you.
we
Thank you,
thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
everyone. Bye bye.